Hey everyone, welcome back to another Jazz Drummer Q-Tip of the Week. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about and revealing 10 secrets to playing a perfect drum solo. Now, I know we all have different concepts for what a perfect drum solo is, so what I want you to do is leave a comment down below with a drum solo or a couple drum solos that you feel are perfect. And I'm going to, in this lesson, just reveal things that I listen out for when I listen to drum solos. Also, for these are the things that I try to incorporate in my own solos. Later on in the lesson, I'm going to attempt to play a perfect drum solo. So you got to stay tuned, and I want you to let me know how I did. Hey, by the way, my name is Quincy Davis. Thank you so much for tuning in if you're new. Please consider subscribing because I put out a lot of lessons that I think you're going to find helpful. And of course, as always, please let me know if you're enjoying this lesson by pushing that like button. All right, it is lesson time, but you know we can't continue until you tell me if you are ready. Are you guys ready? Are you really ready? Well then, let's go! Now, all my students know I have a favorite saying. That saying is, form is everything. Repeat it. Form is everything. Because without form, when you get together with musicians, other musicians, the main thing that we have to rely on, that we have in common, is the form. So, when we take a solo, we have to adhere to the form. If we don't, then no one will know where the heck we are. So you gotta deal with the form, play the form perfectly, and make sure it's clear so that everybody can follow where you are in your solo. Sometimes maybe there is no necessarily clear form, or there's no specific form that we're playing over, and that's fine. In that case, we have a lot more freedom. But when there is form, we have to play the form and make sure it's clear. Boom. Now, if you play something, you have to make sure that you can execute it, okay? And that is why most of the time when I take a solo, when I'm soloing, 99% of the things I play, I've worked out in some way, shape, or form. Now, it's spontaneous how I put them together, right? And I think this is the case with most people. But at some point, I have worked out and practiced certain execution of ideas and phrases, right? And rhythms and rudiments. If at one point you do not work those things out and you attempt them in a solo, it's going to be really hard to execute them accurately. So you want to make sure, and if you can't execute them, then you can't really express yourself in a clear fashion. So you have to have nearly perfect execution of your ideas. Hey, for those of you who've inquired about lessons this fall, I've opened up my schedule and I do have some availability. It's limited, but I do have some availability. So I'll put the link down below if you're interested in signing up for a lesson, online lessons. Also, if you're interested in play-alongs for drum set, I have so many play-alongs that a lot of drummers have found helpful, and I'll put that link down below as well. I think you're going to enjoy checking out some of those play-alongs. Now, for me, I love the tradition, whether it's jazz tradition, whether it's Afro-Cuban tradition, it's Brazilian tradition, African. I like the tradition, but I am not limited to the tradition. So I love also more modern approaches that are based in tradition. So for me, I try to incorporate a balance of both, right? And that ratio or that balance is going to change depending on a lot of factors. How I'm feeling, what kind of song we're playing, who I'm playing with, the drums I'm playing. There's a lot of variables. But I'm always thinking about, okay, modern language and more traditional language. And what's the balance that I want to use for this solo to make it as perfect as possible to me. I try to incorporate as many melodic and motivic ideas as possible without it sounding too boring. So these are the types of ideas in a solo that can really allow your solo to sound more melodic and make the listener kind of recognize certain figures that maybe you develop. Aha! If you establish a real clear motif, right, or a theme or a melodic idea, then you can kind of develop that, even if you're not perfectly developing it. But if you're just kind of using it as a basis for your solo, sometimes it really can focus your ideas and make it sound much more cohesive rather than lots of different ideas that you're just throwing into a solo that don't really relate to each other. Whether we're actually playing time or we're taking a solo, our time has to be solid. It doesn't have to be perfect, even though we're trying to play a perfect drum solo. It doesn't have to be perfect time, but it has to be pretty good time. If our tendency is to speed up in a solo or to slow down at certain tempos, then we have to practice that out of our playing so that when we do take a solo, our time is solid. I try to take the listener on a journey, an adventure, right? So sometimes that adventure comes with surprises. Often it does. So if everything is perfectly neatly packaged and fits into a perfect kind of box of 2-measure or 4-measure or 8-measure phrases, that's good. But it's also good to change it up and try to obscure those phrases, those perfectly even phrases, and play over the bar line. Play some different kinds of polyrhythms, different groupings to get over the bar line to create more hemiolas. And this creates a little more tension, which will make those landing points in your solo, when you play that crash on beat 1 or the end of 4, it'll make it a lot more impactful and profound, and it'll feel much more satisfying rather than always doing that every 2 or 4 or 8 measures. It creates a sense of excitement, a sense of tension and release. So these are things that can create an adventurous and exciting kind of journey-like solo that, to me, can create a perfect solo. If we're only playing one dynamic, then it gets a little dull. Just like any kind of musical situation, the more dynamics you use, the more interesting that the music is. So in my solos, I try to be really aware of the dynamics that I'm playing at. So I might play an idea, and I'll play the same idea, right? Or right? It creates a sense of like drama, actually, and it keeps what you're playing much more interesting, even if what I'm playing is not necessarily the most amazing thing. Suddenly it becomes a lot more interesting just by virtue of using dynamics. All right, so this is a big one. We take that perfect solo, but we botch the part where we got to bring the band in. Whoops, not cool. We got to bring the band in a way that invites them and is really clear, is musical, right? And it kind of creates a perfect ending to what was a perfect solo. So really work on making sure you can bring the band back in a clear manner without going 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. We shouldn't necessarily need that. We shouldn't need that. We should be able to do that in a musical way in our solo, that the band is really clear when the top of the form comes around. So make sure you can bring the band back in. Playing with conviction and intent is so important, and that's something that you see all the greats do. You see Roy Haynes, you see Elvin Jones, Jimmy Cobb, Papa Joe Jones. Every note that they play is perfect. Buddy Rich, right? Bill Stewart, Greg Hutchinson. Lewis Nash. I could go on and on, but all of them have that in common, that every note they play is intentional and they're playing it with conviction, right? And they're playing it, so for me, that translates into playing with your heart, playing from your heart, playing with feeling, and not just playing and going through the motions, making sure that every note you play counts. This last one, I have to say, is probably the most important thing. If you're doing all of those things that I listed, but you're not doing this, it's not a perfect solo. You got to have fun. If you're not having fun, then it's not fun to listen to, honestly. If we're not enjoying our own solos, then nobody else is really going to enjoy them as much as we would want them to enjoy them. So at the end of the day, make sure you're having fun, okay? If you're not having fun, usually that means that you're stressed out over what you're playing and you're struggling with some aspect of what you're trying to play. So you have to get to the point in your playing that you can kind of be free and actually just enjoy it for what it is, okay? So have fun. All right, so this is the part of the lesson where I am going to attempt to play a perfect drum solo. I'm going to use a jazz classic, the Flintstones. Flintstones, meet the Flintstones. You know that one. Well, some of you might not. You're too young. But I'm going to use that form. It's a classic rhythm changes form, AABA, and we'll just see what happens. Remember, it's 8 measures, that's AA. Bridge is 8 measures, and then the last A is also 8 measures. Okay, so follow along. One chorus. Let's see if I can do it. How'd I do? I think there were a couple little execution issues, but I think the time was followed. I think the form was pretty clear. The balance of traditional language, maybe I could have used a little more modern language. I don't know. Time was solid. I think I took you on somewhat of an adventure within the kind of confines of just one chorus. And I think I brought the band back in. I don't know, maybe I could have used more dynamics. And I played with a lot of heart and conviction. I definitely had fun. So maybe it wasn't the perfect drum solo, but it was pretty good in that I played what I wanted to play or played what I was hearing. So that's something that I'll just keep on working at. And I hope that you will continue to work on it as well. All right, so that is the lesson on 10 secrets to playing a perfect drum solo. I hope this helps you. I hope you work on it. And as always, I hope you practice hard, but practice smart. Catch you later. Take care. Bye-bye.